because the Stormfather's just like, I'm just a storm, I can't do anything else. And then Dalinar's just like, try, bitch, like, come on now. Stab the dude, stab him right there. All right, guys, so today we got a different kind of video. I'm bringing you the book Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson and the Stormlight Archive. Man, this one was a journey. Like, Brandon Sanderson will literally write like 500,000 words and call it like one book. Like, it is absolutely insane. It took me like a long time to start to like get through, and I want to read other books outside of like Brandon Sanderson and like all the big ones, you know, like Game of Thrones. We got Wheel of Time, obviously I talk a lot about that. We got Brandon Sanderson with his huge series. There's so many other really good series. I'm in the middle of Malazan right now, which is another like huge sort of series, so I want to get into other books. It's really hard when like Brandon writes so many words and like such a huge book, but man, they are awesome. I have obviously my criticisms. I am a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. I actually plan on going to the Dragonsteel Minicon coming up in November, so I'm super excited for that. Kind of an expensive trip because I live in Virginia and it's all the way in Utah, so but I'm gonna try to make it work. I get to be able to travel with the job that I do, so I'm gonna try to make it work, make it happen. I want to go see him talk and get the book signed. Even though I haven't read any of those books, I'm just excited to go out, meet some fans of Brandon Sanderson, meet him himself. But today we're going to talk about Brandon Sanderson. I have my criticisms, a lot of good. There's like quite a bit of neutral in there. My favorite book in the series is definitely Oathbringer. Oathbringer is amazing, and then probably Words of Radiance, The Way of Kings, and then this one. So this one is my least favorite, but it is awesome. It's the only book that's like actually had me emotional and made me cry. So we'll get into that later. But first, be sure to subscribe to the channel, guys. It helps me out a lot. I want to know if you guys like this. What's your favorite part of this book? Do you like Brandon Sanderson? Do you like this sort of content? I'll keep making more of it if you do. Just let me know. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment below, guys. I love hearing from you guys. Now let's get into the video. I really just want to talk about the book, not really like give a review or anything. Just want to talk about some things that I did like, some things that I didn't like, some things I felt neutral about, and maybe just give some criticism, and we can just talk about some of the events that happened in the book. So first off, I want to kind of just like start with the negative, then go to the neutral, and then like end on a really good note of the stuff that I really did like. I'm going to start with like the negative though, and a lot of the stuff that was, so spoilers for the full book, by the way, like if you couldn't tell, but spoilers for the whole thing. All the beginning part of basically the occupation of the Parshendi inside of the tower, or the Voidbringers, or whatever you want to call them. The beginning of part of that all was sort of like a slog to me. Like, I know we had to go through that because we had to get our like payoff at the end of the book, which like Brandon Sanderson does so well. It's his setups for the end of his books. They're just like, the payoffs are just awesome. They're amazing. They're what makes the whole book. So there was definitely like a good like 100-some pages where I was like, oh man, like it's hard to get through this, but I know that he's reputable as an author, that once I get through these like slog sort of times, that it's going to be so worth it at the end, and it most definitely was. But if you're not a Sanderson fan and you don't really know that, you got to be able to like sit in, get ready for his setups, and then you know his setups are going to be so worth it. Yeah, but that whole first part where Navani was working with the Parshendi and she was like not the queen anymore, trying to be a scholar, it was interesting to see the Tower Friend, the sibling, and all of that. Like, there's definitely interesting nuggets here and there, but it was like, oh man, the main events that are happening, I'm like, oh my gosh. Even before that, where Kaladin was like, I'm not going to fight anymore, which you understand why, and you know all the trauma that he's been through, so you're like, okay, I get why you're doing all of this, like, you need a break, I understand, but we love to see those cool moments from Kaladin. Like, he's a badass, he's awesome, and I wanted to get there, and I was waiting for that moment. I was like so scared, because I was like, is this whole book just going to be like him being like a mentor and helping people with like mental illnesses, which is like, this is a really cool angle to his character. I want to see him be a badass though. Like the whole time, that's how I was feeling, but I understood why Kaladin had to go through all of that growth and all that he was feeling. And you know, we get at the end of the book that he still wants to go back to that, which I think will be really cool, but like not what I want to read in the books. I want Kaladin to be awesome. I just want to be awesome all the time, but he's a sad boy, so you know, it's hard, and he's helping other people, which is great. But I was like really, like, my heart dropped when I was like, oh man, like for a good portion of the book, we're not going to see Kaladin fight. And it's like, and he's like, you know, doing all of this sort of stuff, mentoring and helping people out of the clinic with all the scholars and stuff like that, because they have no idea what to do with people with mental illnesses and stuff like that. So he's like reforming and helping people, and that was great. But it was like, I wanted to see some action. I wanted to see what was going on. And you know, I just didn't get a lot of that in the first part. But like I said, you know, the payoff is going to be super awesome. So it was like, okay, it's interesting what he's doing. For me, I'm like, all right, right, I'm waiting for the cool stuff to happen now. I don't know. That's just my opinion. It's not necessarily right or wrong, but yeah, that's how I was feeling. I'm glad he went through it though for the payoff that eventually happened. But finally, when Kaladin had to make that decision to save Teft, I was like, dude, I was ready. I was like, stab the dude, stab him right there. And his dad just like absolutely freaking out. And I'm like, shut up, dude. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know, whatever. And then it again was kind of like a little slog of him like trying to like figure out how to use the mechanism and then going through. And then finally when he had that fight in the well, I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And then it started picking up again. There's definitely a span in his sort of like story that I was like, I'm just not really feeling it. Before we had him where he was like super sad and in the Way of Kings, and he had his own little thing going on, and I was like, okay, like I get why this is all happening. And eventually decided to help Breach 4, and then that was awesome. And Words of Radiance, it was a lot of him like protecting Dalinar and his family, and that was really cool. And then Oathbringer, we have the travels through Shadesmar and all of that, and they had them going to like Elhokar and stuff like that, and going into the city, and it was cool. I liked all of that sort of stuff, but this one really just seemed like for a while for Kaladin to be like, all right, we really got to get there. The stuff with Navani was pretty cool, figuring out with the sibling and all the stuff that was happening. A lot of setup and world building was just really all fleshed out here in the big setup, and it was really cool payoff. But for a while, I'm like, all right, let's get on to it. Another part of the book that like I said, like all these parts, they're kind of like slogs. Like we usually think of like the Wheel of Time where they have like a few books that are slogs. Like Brandon sort of has slogs in the middle of like every one of his books, because he talks about how he sets up these books as like 2 books, even though it's like in 5 parts. So there's somewhere there in the middle or kind of it's like, all right, it's getting kind of like a slog. Like let's get on with it. It was really cool to see that part with Adolin leading Shallan to that spren. That was just magical. It was a huge, great picture that was happening. That was really cool. But the rest of the journey, I was like, like whatever, okay, we're just setting up. Even the parts with like, I love Yasna as a character, but even with her fighting on the battlefield on the front lines to show that she's like an adequate like sort of leader and battle tactician and stuff like that, it was cool to see. I just really wasn't all that interested. I like the stuff when Yasna is just being like super, witty and stuff like that. She's politicking and doing all sort of that sort of stuff. That's what I really love for her as a character. So when she does that sort of stuff, I don't see it as a slog, but when, like Kaladin is like doing downtime and like not really doing anything, I see that as a slog, because I'm like, I want Kaladin for action. I want like Shallan for her sort of espionage sort of stuff. I want like Kaladin for doing awesome things. And eventually we do get all of those things in the book, but there's times where it sort of just like is dragging on. I don't think I'm the only one that has that opinion. But yeah, those are my main sort of like negative sort of parts that I was like, all right, like slog time. It was cool to see Dalinar. I was interested in how they were going to do it, because I'm like, I want to see Dalinar back in action. And then I believe it was the Hardazian sort of guy. He was the one that's going to be taking over the armies for Dalinar so that he can focus on being a bondsmith and what that means. And I was like, ooh, this is like really cool getting into the lore. But I also love Dalinar for just going like absolutely crazy. That's why Oathbringer is my favorite book, because we see his backstory and it's horrific and terrible, but his end payoff is just one of the best in the series. I think the best in the series, even though this payoff at the end of this book had me like crying. I don't think it was the best one. I think it was Dalinar's best when he was facing against the armies in Oathbringer, and he was saying, you can't have my pain, to Odium, and it was just, ooh, like so good. But yeah, so more of like the neutral, where I was like, okay, these parts are sort of okay. You get like why they're here. So my like neutral sort of feeling parts of the book, anytime we got Venli or Ashonis or Eshonai, I used to call her Ashoni. I don't know, when I read the books, and then when I do my rereads, I do the audiobook. So, and then I heard it was Eshonai, and I was like, that sounds a lot better, but I used to call her Ashoni. But anytime we got Venli and Eshonai's sort of like flashbacks and stuff like that, people don't like those. Even people, I know a lot of people that just like skip them, and I'm like, no, you can't skip them. They're like, obviously Brandon put a lot of the stuff here on purpose, so you gotta like go through it. I just found it to be very neutral, except until the end, where we got Venli's perspective at the feast and the treaty and stuff like that. That was like super interesting, because we were getting heralds, we were getting like a lot of stuff, which was really cool. But through all of those flashbacks and all of that, I was pretty like very like neutral on. I didn't really, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I found the me, this is really terrible. I found the interlude chapters to be more interesting than Eshonai and Venli's like perspective and stuff like that. Except, oh, also a great moment. I think I have it saved for the end, but it was Eshonai's last chapter in the book. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I found the interlude chapters to be even more interesting because we got some more of Lift, which her novella is awesome. We got some Tarvangian. We just got some people in there. I love Tarvangian's whole part, or Taravangian. Sorry, Taravangian. I keep getting like the way I say it in the books, and then when I do my rereads, it's like, okay, none of these are how you say them, so I'm trying to say them right now. But yeah, a lot of the parts that I felt super neutral about was anytime we saw the Parshendi. Like, I know it's going to be really cool when we get to like the next book and probably like the next set of books. It'll be very crucial to the story. But right now I was like, okay, you know, whatever, that's fine. Pretty neutral on those sort of events. Shallan sort of stuff, her story is always espionage, spy sort of things. And, you know, I've never hated them except for The Way of Kings, but that wasn't very like espionage-esque as it gets later on. I honestly, first time read through, I didn't like Shallan's stuff all that much at all. I saw her as a whiny kid, and just like she did whatever she had to for her family. I just didn't really enjoy Shallan stuff in the first book. I've already done a few rereads of the first book because when I get bored, I just play it on Audible. But now I'm trying to get through other books and stuff like that, so I'm trying to move on from that. But yeah, I found Shallan stuff in the first book. This is like a tangent, so I don't mean to get on that. More neutral that I was feeling was the Parshendi stuff and Shallan stuff throughout most parts of it until ramping up near the end and all the events that happen there, which I will get into later. I'm trying to see if I missed anything. You know, when you write like a 1,000,000-word book, there's a lot that happens. But yeah, basically I'm just trying to like clump it up into like big sort of balloons sort of things. And like I said, with the Navani stuff, it was more like a mixed bag. Like it was like neutral, okay, didn't really like, okay, I'm really liking, because when it started getting to the dialogue with Raboniel and like what Raboniel was like trying to do and stuff like that, and how she was trying to basically just end the war, and she wanted obviously her people to win the war and not the humans, but she just wanted the death. She wanted all of that to eventually stop, and like this war that is always going on like will keep going if they don't try to put an end to it. But little does she know, she's serving like Odium, who Odium's ultimate goal is to have people just like keep fighting so they can get stronger. Odium's whole goal is to just like keep having these species to keep fighting, and through that it'll make them stronger. And then when the big war finally happens, which I'm excited for Brandon Sanderson to do, he'll have like the most elite sort of people to be able to fight against all the other sort of splinters off of Adonalsium. And I didn't even realize, but doing even more and more research, I'm like, oh my gosh, Odium is like absolutely terrible. Like, this is not a good dude. Like, whatever power he has is like not good, because he's out here like murking people left and right, murking other shards and people like that. So yeah, I'm like, okay. And I'm excited to get into more of this sort of stuff. I want to do more Cosmere talk. I wanted to get caught up on Rhythm of War before I started doing more like lore videos. So eventually I would just want to keep talking about the Cosmere. So if you guys like this sort of stuff, you just let me know. I liked all the stuff with Raboniel and Navani, especially near the end where they're just like talking about uniting and they're figuring out the tones, they're figuring out how to mix all the lights and all that. It was really cool to kind of see, so I did like that sort of stuff. So now into the parts that I just loved, and I'll try to go into like chronological order, but definitely at the beginning, I love obviously seeing Kaladin fight, but what got me the most was the little moments, was the moments with Adolin and Shallan and Kaladin, and how Adolin is like trying to be there for Kaladin, and you know, he's like his friend and stuff like that, and Kaladin can be brooding and he can be like sulking and stuff like that, and Adolin's always just like, I'm here, and you know, like I'm supposed to make people happy, especially because Shallan and Kaladin are both like not at all, but Adolin's like, I gotta be the strong one, and I just like, I love that attribute, I love that in Adolin, and he just always wants to make Kaladin happy, make him feel welcome. So that was just a super cool part where they're sitting down drinking and just like talking. Love that, the calm before the storm, where before everything was happening. I love downtime, when downtime is used for character development and all that sort of stuff, but when it seems like we just keep going over the same things over and over again, that's the parts of the book where I'm like, oh, okay, I've seen this so many times. But you know, you get why it happens, because people are creatures of habit, and we fall into these like default stages. And that's why one of the moments with Teft, where he was like, I keep falling into doing the fire moss and stuff like that, and I'm addicted. And he used to be super beaten down because of that, but he finally realized that his friends will always be there for him to pick him back up. And that was an awesome moment. Teft had some great stuff near the end when he finally woke up. So that was really cool. Like I mentioned earlier, another great part where I was like, all right, Kaladin, kill something, kill someone, go. And then he finally like killed that Parshendi that was inside of his dad's clinic. And I was like, hell yeah. And he was like running away and all that. I was like, yes, I was been waiting for that moment like all book. Thank God. And you know, he was like, but it was like super sad at the same time because he's just like, this is all I ever am. It's all I'm ever going to be. I'm going to just kill things and all of this. And then he gets like super sad about it. But you know, I'm like, yes, I'm finally ready for like Kaladin to kill something. That was another awesome part of the book. The next part I wanted to talk about was just figuring out like figuring out Dalinar's new powers, and especially with the Stormfather and what he can do and the sway that he has with the Stormfather. And you know, Spren don't change, like they stay the same. And the thing with humanity is trying to get them to change and adapt and stuff like that. But you know, to Spren, people change too much and they can't be trusted. But the really cool thing is like Dalinar's trying to get the Stormfather to change, and because the Stormfather's just like, I'm just a storm, I can't do anything else. And then Dalinar's just like, try, bitch, like come on now. And I'm like, yes, hell yeah, Dalinar, get it. But it was really cool to see Dalinar travel through the storm, try to get the Stormfather to be able to work with him, you know, freeze time a little bit and stuff like that, and just working the new powers and stuff. So that was super cool to see. Yeah, another cool part, I always love seeing Hoid. I love seeing Wit. So seeing Wit and Yasna's relationship, you know, that whole time, that was really cool to see. It was cool to see Wit try to manipulate this treaty and stuff like that, or not treaty, but this document for the Battle of Champions between Odium and Dalinar. That was really cool to see how Hoid had his like hand in it so that Odium couldn't hurt him. Odium can do stuff to him, so Wit didn't want to agree to, or Hoid didn't want to agree to see Odium unless he agreed that Odium couldn't hurt him in any sort of way. So that was really cool to see. It was great to see the relationship. It was cool to see Wit like swooning over Yasna, but Yasna is just like more interested with his mind and stuff like that and all he's about, so that was really cool. I love those sort of moments. But yeah, done with the rambling. I'm gonna go into my top. I have like 5 moments here, so like top like 5 moments, but I say my top 3 with some bonus moments. So my top moment number 5 is going to be Shallan becoming Veil. I guess that's the best way to put that. So at this point in the story, we kind of like have Shallan basically going into her shell for most of the time. So Radiant and Veil are at the forefront, and it's just like, it's kind of annoying. That's the part of where I'm just like, okay, we got to get through this. But eventually there's this another persona called Formless that Shallan has to become so that she can like do what she needs to do. And basically she gets to the point where she believes that she has to become a part of the Ghost Blood so that she can abandon everyone so everyone doesn't abandon her. And it's just like a huge crutch. And it comes to the point where she is going to have to kill a Herald to basically become a part of these Ghost Bloods, and then she can have her own journey and stuff like that with them. But she would be losing everyone she loves, like all that sort of stuff. Like it wouldn't go well for her at all. So she has to create this persona called Formless, but we end up figuring out Formless was like, isn't real. Like it was just Shallan the whole time, like just taking up this. I mean, all of her personalities are her, but it was her finally like taking hold of this destiny, and this was what she was going to do. The wrong thing to do, obviously. And the only personality she can't keep back is Veil. Veil is one of her personalities, and it's the one that keeps her secrets. And we see all of the secrets that Shallan has, and she's not able to face her past. Early on, when they first start their journey into Shadesmar, we see this cryptic Spren that is sort of has the eyes sort of like someone who's been a Spren that's been killed, basically. We see it with Maya and stuff like that with Adolin Spren. But we see this one at the beginning. It ends up tying back to Shallan having to face her past. And what she did is she abandoned her oaths when she was a little kid and actually killed that cryptic Spren. And that was something that she couldn't face, and she finally was able to like see that and face it, and finally like fuse with Veil. Basically, it was really cool. They had really awesome moments with Kaladin and Shallan, who had like great character moments, and that was just an awesome one because she's on her way to kill this Herald to be able to save her husband, and then also at the same time like abandon her family and her husband and everybody to be able to go join the Ghost Bloods for killing a Herald, and it basically causes this huge like light weaving that she does, and she goes back to this moment where she killed this cryptic Spren, and we see what actually happens, and she finally accepts the truth in her past and just breaks down, and she basically fuses Veil with herself because Veil is like, I can't keep these secrets anymore. These secrets are yours. We get this huge like breakthrough moment with Shallan. I love Shallan. I really do. I love her as a character. And it's like, it's, I guess you could say it's like a hate-love relationship, because a lot of her stuff, I'm just like, like if I was a weaker person and some other people do this, like with the Parshendi things, like I would just skip them. Like I would just be like, whatever, just give me the cliff notes. But I don't want to. I really do love Shallan. There's just parts where I'm like, okay, let's get on with it. Maybe it's just because there's other characters that I love way more, like Dalinar and Kaladin. Like I love them, and Yasna. That was a great moment with Shallan, and then she finally sees the Herald, and she's trying to convince him all of these sort of things, and then the Spren see her, and they make the Herald step down from being the judge, and it ends up not working for her. But it's such masterful work that Brandon Sanderson does. It's like we get a character victory, a plot defeat, but the plot defeat becomes a victory in the end because it's so much more than we expected. And that's what his like philosophy is, always talks about. He's like, promise them a boat, but give them a plane. And I'm like, I always want to keep that in mind when I do my writing as well. My second favorite moment is definitely with Hoid and Odium, however you want to say that. It's when Hoid meets with Taravangian, who is Odium, which he still thinks it's the old Odium. And he has this huge masterful sort of plan that he has, that he's trying to like trick Odium with, and he's going in to meet with Odium, and they talk, and eventually like Hoid starts seeing something different going on with Odium. Odium's a little bit different, and it's obviously Taravangian like having this new sort of power and trying to mess with it, but also keep this facade that's going on. And Hoid has had this conversation built up in his head for like 1,000 years and stuff like that. You know, it's like so articulate, so witty, you know, that sort of thing. Love Hoid. The conversation's not going exactly how Hoid wanted it to, but still at the same time he thinks it's like going well, you know, which I thought was really interesting, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Odium's been trapped at Braze for like 4,000 years, and Hoid said this was the first time he's talked to him in 1,000 years. So did like Hoid talk to him in that like, you know, 4,000 year time span? Like, what do you guys think? Was he actually trapped at Braze? I'm still doing my research and lore and stuff like that, so you guys let me know if you are more experts in the Cosmere, which I want to get to as well, and I want to make some videos on. But yeah, you guys let me know. But yeah, so Hoid thinks the conversation is going well, and then he leaves the conversation, and he was like, something's off, something's different. And he goes back, or doesn't go back, he looks back, and then Odium's like right on him, and he's looking into Hoid, and Hoid's like, oh crap. And then it ends up that Taravangian is able to take some of the memories that he has stored away. And he's looking in there, and he sees them, and he takes away the recent memory that just happened. And it's a really cool chapter because it brings up a lot of speculation, a lot of theories, which I hopefully plan on making, and like maybe some more videos as well. But it makes it really interesting of like, did he take away even more than that? I don't know if it really matters for like a story sort of viewpoint of like if he took more, because we don't really know too much about Hoid, but he has like a lot of different powers from all across like the Cosmere. So he took that recent memory, and the whole thing plays back again. If you read the books, you would know. So the whole memory plays back again, and Wit ends the conversation, and it goes exactly how he's planned, but everything feels a little bit off. But at the end, he reassures himself that everything's going to plan. So it's like, oh my gosh, what does Hoid have planned? What else did Odium maybe take from his memories? What is Taravangian learning? This could not go well at all. So it leaves a lot of speculation up. I love seeing Hoid, and, you know, I love seeing Wit. I love seeing Taravangian as Odium now. I initially didn't like that moment. I guess this could be a part of my bonus moment now. My bonus moment was Taravangian becoming Odium. And it was so cool because Taravangian had it plotted when he wasn't like completely smart, but he knew what he kind of needed to do, and the connecting the pieces together and what needed to happen. And it just so happened it all worked together. As Szeth met Taravangian and killed him, and in that moment he was able to grab from the spiritual realm. He was able to grab the sword, and the sword came with him in the spiritual realm, or the cognitive realm. Which one is it? You guys can correct me. The spiritual realm, and he was able to best Odium with the sword. That like threw me for a loop, because I'm like, Odium maybe didn't see that the sword was in the physical realm, but Taravangian had it in the physical realm and was able to grab it from the spiritual realm and kill Odium just in time. Like, that was really interesting. So that was my second, that was like kind of like my bonus moment. I loved when that happened. So my number one favorite part in the books definitely had to be Kaladin speaking his fourth ideal. The setup for this was just absolutely amazing. We get to see Kaladin. He just lost Teft. Teft died. And they just wanted him to like sit there and just like really soak it all in and just feel utter despair. And it was just gruesome. And they finally take his father, and he snaps out of it, and he tries to go save his father, going all the way up to the top of the tower, and his father flies off, and he doesn't see him. And I don't know if he knows his father. I think he knows his father's like falling at this point to his death, but Kaladin can't go and save him because he doesn't have his surge binding. And it's just absolutely so terrible to see. So instead, he just decides to jump off the edge. It was that moment in The Way of Kings where he was going to jump off the edge, but, Syl talked him off the edge, basically. So we got a lot of talking off the edge moments here with Kaladin, but, in a lot of ways, I felt like I've been there before, like Kaladin, like, not being able to save the people that you love and just feeling like you're utterly hopeless and stuff like that. And just like so heart-wrenching to see, because Kaladin is my favorite character, man. Like, you really feel and love these characters. You live with them for like, almost like a 500,000 words a book, and it's like 4 books now. You're really living with these guys for a while. And just to see that was the first time ever that I cried to a book, was that chapter 108, where he gets that flashback with Tien. So after he decides, there's nothing else worth living for and stuff like that, he jumps off the edge. And the Stormfather sees it, and Dalinar sees it, and he tries everything in his power to try to get Kaladin to come back. And Kaladin is still just like nah, no. And then Dalinar tries to convince the Stormfather to freeze time, basically, or stop it, make it very slow, and give him a vision. And he gives him the vision of Tien. And Kaladin sees Tien at the war camps, and he finally comes to his realization what this is. And he sees Tien when Tien is about to be sent off to basically the front lines to die. And this is basically the moment right before Tien dies. And Kaladin tries to stop him. And Tien's just like, no, like, don't stop me. Like I gotta do this. This is my duty. And Kaladin's like, what are you talking about? You're gonna die. Like, we can just get out of here. And he's like, no, do you see those kids? And they look over, and all the other kids, because it's just a bunch of kids, they're all afraid. They're so scared. They're not being, they don't want to die. They know if they go out here, they're gonna die, and they're super scared and all of that. And Tien's just like, I gotta go with them. I have to be brave. I have to be brave for them. And Kaladin's just absolutely just like in tears, and I'm like, I'm getting super sad thinking about it. But it's like Kaladin's just kind of trying to convince him otherwise that he doesn't have to go. And Tien tells him he's got to be brave for them. And Kaladin's just like, I don't even know. I don't even know if this is real, basically. And Tien ends up giving him a wooden horse and stuff like that, trying to convince him that this vision is like sort of real. And Tien goes out, and Kaladin can't stop him. And finally, Kaladin comes to this realization and that he can't save everybody. That having these memories with these people is all that he has, and that's good enough. And that he has to keep living on for them, basically. So he finally speaks the fourth ideal, basically that he just like, he can't save everybody. And after just like weeping for like an entire chapter, he gets I'm getting like flustered thinking about it, but after he finally says the fourth ideal, after being so sad for so long, at the end of the chapter, he springs into surge binding. He has all these spren coming around him. He gets his shard plate, and he goes down, and he swiftly saves his dad, and he just comes in to save the day. And it's just like, this is why I read the Stormlight Archive. Moments like this, they're absolutely spectacular, absolutely amazing. I believe that's what Brandon says, like that's how he writes his book. He has the huge setup, he has the huge payoff that's going to be like super awesome in each book, and then he kind of like builds from there. I believe for the most part that's how he does it, and then he does his framing and has outline in his work. But that was just so awesome to see the shard play, all the spren coming around him. But that has to be at least my second favorite moment in the Stormlight Archive. I still have to hold Dalinar's up first, because that was just, Oathbringer was a perfect Stormlight book for me. It was awesome. I loved it the entire time. Even through the slogs, you had Dalinar's chapters and his flashbacks that I thought were just super awesome. But anyway, so yep, that's my number one moment in the Rhythm of War. It was a roller coaster of emotions. I was crying because I was like so sad of what was happening, and then I was crying because finally Kaladin was able to come out the end of it just like with this more optimistic view, and he was able to save all the people, just what I've been waiting for all book. And it was just beautiful. It was beautiful, man. I love these books so much. It's my favorite fantasy series. Like I love it so much. But yeah, so Daniel Green has this theory that he thinks Kaladin is gonna die in the 5th book, which I have some theories on. I will be so sad because the second half of the books, they take place 15 years after the first ones, and they're more focused on the Herald. So I have a lot of theories. I'll briefly give them here. I also have another bonus, like sort of one. I knew I had 5. I was just like messing with my script and not really looking at it too well. But my other bonus moment, which kind of was up there with Kaladin, was Eshonai denying Odium's rhythms and going to the rhythm of victory. And that's when she was bonded with a friend without her knowing, and the Stormlight accepted her as Radiant. And she dies in those chasms, as we know. And she meets up with the Stormfather, and he tells her that she was basically accepted as a Radiant, so she lives on in the Cognate realm as like a little shadow, basically, for a little bit. And he's like, you did good, like all that sort of stuff. And he's able to show her the entire world, which was Eshonai's like entire goal for her life. All she ever wanted to do was see the entire world, and she was able to do it here. That was such a cool moment. I love that. We got to see all of that. Also brought up a lot of speculation and sort of theories, because after that she goes to the Beyond, which the Stormfather doesn't even know what's in the Beyond. So that's where her spirit went. So that was like super cool to see. Awesome moment. Anyway, onto some theories, just real quick. It might seem crazy. It might be really dumb. I don't really know. I think there's going to be new heralds, and I think the characters we've been following a lot now are going to be those new heralds. Maybe that's really stupid. Maybe I don't really know too much of the Cosmere lore. So it's either that the characters that we know are going to become heralds, and Kaladin dies at the end of the books, and we think that he's like really dead, but he ends up going to Braze, and we get a lot of stuff starting in book 6 or book 1 of the Second Era with Kaladin and Braze. That's sort of my just theory right now. Maybe all of them don't become new heralds. Maybe some heralds still stick around, but our main sort of cast become heralds, which I think would be really cool, and I think that's the way that it's going. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm getting my Cosmere lore like all wrong, but I think it's totally likely that Kaladin could die, but I totally think that he becomes a herald before that without us really knowing, and he ends up being sent to Braze and stuff like that, and we get a lot of Braze things going on. Maybe he does die, maybe he doesn't. I hope that he doesn't. But yeah, that's my theory. So either if there's not new heralds that are happening, like Dalinar and Navani, Yasna, Kaladin, and Shallan, if they're not the new heralds or whatever, who knows? Probably not going to happen. What I think is going to happen, and we got a little bit of glimpse of it, this is my second theory if that doesn't happen. My second theory is when Navani was made a bondsmith, one of the heralds was able to have more of a clearer mind, and he wasn't as insane. So maybe new heralds are made, or maybe a lot more bondsmiths are made, and that's able to clear this sort of craziness that's going on with the heralds. Or the heralds die, and then we have new heralds. But I think that's a very good alternative, is that, well, I know all the heralds don't die, because I think the last book, book 10, is focused on Talon. Talon? Is that how you say it? I think that's the last book of the whole series is him. So I know they don't all die. Whatever. Who knows? I don't know. Do you know? Do you have better Cosmere lore than me? Probably. But yeah, I think Kaladin, I would love Kaladin to become a new herald. And we think he dies at the end of the book, and we get an epilogue of him on Braze and Void Bringers all around him. That'd be so cool. I would love that so much. I would be crying because Kaladin would be dead, but then he can somehow get back to Roshar somehow. But yeah, you guys let me know. This video's gone on super long. I'll probably just come up with whole video, a whole separate video with theories and stuff like that. You guys let me know if you love content like this. I love talking about it, so leave comments below so we can keep up the discussion. Thank you guys for listening, staying tuned, and I'll talk to you guys in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one.